Hi guys, today I would like to talk about a topic which is very near and dear to all the parents, right? With young kids. Uh, the topic is, what do schools and parents teach their children today, and versus what they should actually teach their kids, right? So, just to elaborate on this topic, what I wanted to say is, I feel as a young parent, the priority of the school is mm, uh, conformity of the kids, right? They bunch together 40 kids, 30 kids in a class, and they want to teach same thing to all these things, and they want all the kids to behave, and the output of the kids should be same, somewhat similar, above a threshold actually, right? So they basically want all the kids to conform to whatever they are putting in front of them, which can be totally different to the needs of the child, the talents, the inherent skills or interests the kid has, right? So that's with respect to the schools. uh, with respect to parents, I feel that parents today, they do whatever other parents are doing, right? Meaning they just play along, right? They are so busy in their own world, uh, that they do not have time to think about their kids upbringing. They are just playing along in a system which is mostly driven by advertising, as well as what other parents are doing, and some traditional metrics, like how the kids are doing in exams, right? How is their behavior every day, right? How they are behaving in house, at school, what is the feedback from teachers, right? That is all. And the parents feel proud when the kid scores well on the typical metrics, like standing first or second in a class, winning some trophies or awards, etc., right? But yeah, so mostly it's not you can say a well thought through system. Only you are just following along a traditional typical system which is based on what others are doing. Yeah, so this is I feel that with the in the modern world, with so many issues that are happening around us, right? In terms of the pandemic that we are in, right? With the population growth, how the world has changed, the introduction of internet, and the change in the learning, the output metrics, what's important in terms of a good life, etc. We think we need to look at some different metrics than what is being followed, in my opinion. So I wanted to get your guys' view about this topic, and as fellow parents, if we can discuss and come up with some, pointers, right? Some practical tips which can help others as well and ourselves as well. That is my goal for discussing this. Yeah.
Okay. Mm.
One
It's
sense I get from what you said is that okay, the schools are forcing all the kids to study the same topics and come back with the same output, right? And that seemed to be one of your you know beefs. Am I right?
Yeah.
So I also have felt this, but I don't know what can they do, right? Because you have it is what it is, right? There are like 35 kids in a class with one or two teachers, right? And they meet these kids for 3 hours in a week for each subject. So how do you think they can go about it, right? Like paying that kind of attention to each kid, right? on one hand, there are people saying that the kids need more individual attention, right? So on the other hand, sometimes I feel that, there is too much individual attention. There are times when I feel like, okay, for my son, right, for example, sorry, I feel that he would be better off if no one pays him any attention. Because he is a guy who, may not be listening to the class, or he may not be attentive in the class, right? And he may not get 50 out of 50 or 100 out of 100. But by and large, he knows the subject. You understand, right? So he will, at any time, if you catch him and ask him some questions on the topic, he may be able to answer like 70%, right? The point is that the teachers feel that he is capable of 100. That is their belief, right? So which then they will, because they know him, they will force him to pay more attention. They will always be on his number. Like they will be like, listen. They will call him by name and tell him, listen, pay attention, right? Which is very difficult for him. He is in his own world, and, he will be thinking something. He will be scribbling something on his notebook. Something he will be doing, right? So when the attention gets to him, in some ways it hurts him, because their expectation is that he will get, he is capable of knowing 100%, but he only knows 70% because he is not paying attention, right? So what I'm saying is, on one hand, we say, okay, for each individual, this has to be customized. That seems to be what you're saying. But I feel that the teachers are already struggling to pay the attention that they need. And also there are kids who don't need attention, who do poorly with more attention, right? Because if you don't pay attention, my son is happy, very happy, and he is fine.
Yeah, good point. I have one counter to that, but I will first let Venkat in get his initial thought. And then I have a suggestion to what you are saying, the problem, right? What can the schools do? Yeah. Yes, Venkat.
Okay.
See, usually schools and all these systems are built for, the majority of people, right? So I think, the majority of the people, like, let's say, my guess would be 90%, right? 90% of the kids they'll be fine with this kind of schooling. And I feel that they are fine with this kind of schooling, right? And, regarding your question of specialization, right? Anyways, till 10th standard only, this generalization of and studies, right, is there. After 10th, they are choosing their streams, right? So there is some kind of strong foundation that these schools are building, right? And this curriculum developed by by AICTE and certain governing bodies, it is about giving them a strong foundation, right? For example, mathematics, skills in mathematics, and skills in science, right? These are something, skills in languages. These is, by and large, for most of the kids, they believe that the governing body feels that this is something, which can be added as a curriculum for most of the kids, right? Having said that, a person need not necessarily score 100% in everything, these kids, right? Having a 50% score in subjects is good enough for them to pass to the next class, right? So the expectation is not to, not for all the kids to learn 100%, right? The expectation is that everybody, they should be exposed to some strong foundation, after which they can choose something of their choice, right? If a person is good in arts, they can choose the arts stream. If a person is good in science, they can choose that stream, right? Likewise. So I believe that, I do agree that, there has to be some customization. Like every child has their own learning curve, right? Some children give study more and to catch up the same thing. Some children have to study less, right? So for that, some customized learning is definitely, would make it much better. But I believe that, overall, the foundational, I have I kind of believe that this is a decent evolution of education, right? A decent evolution of education, because back then, people used to go to Gurukul. Parents used to send their kids to Gurukul to learn with the guru. Guru usually were 1 or 2 people, right? And in today's world, we have reduced that into number of periods, and different subjects are taught by different teachers, right? In a common place like school, right? And the kids don't necessarily have to go and stay there, right? Because they can simply, from the luxury of their home, they can just go to school and come back, etc., right? So ancient times, the education system was different, and it has, what we see now is a very good evolution of the education system, where some strong foundational skills are present. And again, I agree, like, there are some children who are especially good, exceptionally good in art and crafts, right? For example, a person who is very good in drawing and sketching and things like that, right? They may not necessarily fit into this 90% curriculum, right? And they have to struggle a bit to go through this curriculum. But at the end of the day, like, for majority of the students, right, this schooling is something that, I feel that, I feel it is okay, right, for majority of students. For some exceptionally talented students in other streams, there has to be some kind of alternate schooling, right? I think there are some alternate schools, for that purpose, right? Whose teaching methodology is different from that of traditional schools, right? However, they are very few in numbers, right? That's not a regular thing. So I feel that, yeah. So at the end of the day,
both you and Venkat and Damu are coming to a point where it's a decent system and there are not much options. What can schools do, basically? Right? That's what you're saying. It's a decent system. My point to that
for
is,
a majority of children, the current existing schools are a very good bet.
Okay, very good bet. Yeah. See, my point I want to make, one point is, I feel there is not much evolution in education system. It's the same from ancient times. How I say is, it's a centralized system in a way where the provider of education is a third person, one person or an institution, and it is remotely available, and the students have to go there to study, right? So that is the system. Why? Because this provider of education was in limited numbers. The supply was limited. It was not like there are gurus everywhere, right? Only specific skilled people were entitled to be gurus. That's why the students all have to go there, actually, to the teacher, as well as this infrastructure like books, the classrooms and laboratories. These were not widely available for everyone in terms of resources. So all the people used to go there. But in today's world, this has completely changed, right? In this world, due to internet, right, and the kind of population explosion we have seen, I feel the resources are plenty and available. That is where the suggestion I wanted to make on Damu's comment, that what can schools do? So basically, the method they are applying, right, where students are assembled in a class and teachers are giving the lessons, and the homework is being given to be done at home. This is the standard system, which has come into place because of lack of resources and time of the education provider. Now I feel with the internet, what they should do is they should give pre-recorded videos or lessons to be done at home as homework, and in the class it should be like interaction, only talking, exploring the interests. So reverse it basically. What is the typical method is where you are trying to find out the interests, limitations or talents, hidden talents of the kid, and give that, make them flourish in the class. And at the home, the lessons through this video tutorial or remote Zoom classes, those kind of things can be done at home. So that is my suggestion on that aspect, what schools can do. So essentially what the point I'm trying to make is, it's a system that has it's a legacy system in place, which is which is just trying to follow what was there earlier. But now the time has come for some radical change. I mean, I feel, and also Venkat, to your point that it's a decent system, I want to make a point that I feel the schools are killing the creativity. It's a well-known thing that they do not bring out the creativity from kids. Actually, they have to do the same set of things which are seem to prove to majority. But more and more, I feel they do not bring that's why we have the happiness index, etc. If you see, so many people go into the same kind of jobs, right? Which they do well, but on an happiness index, it's they are not happy throughout their life because they are not doing what they actually like. They are able to make ends meet, but they are not able to actually be happy because they're not doing what they like, right? So this is what my point is.
To your last point, Aman, right? Is it even possible or desirable that everyone does whatever they like?
Why not? That's the ideal world, right?
No, ideal world is. I'm not sure even that it is an ideal world, right? Unless you have your own universe, right? Your own personal universe. You can't always do what you want, because what you want may not be what it may affect other people's rights, right? So, and it may affect other people's happiness. Like if you let an 8-year-old child or a 5-year-old child to run about and do whatever they want, whatever they like, it may be that they just like breaking things apart and throwing them and really creating a mess, right? That may be what they want, what they really love. But somewhere you have to say that no, that is wrong, right?
That's a mischief activity you are saying, right? What I'm trying about is talent. Let's say someone really wants to paint, or someone is interested in singing. How is our education system promoting that? Or someone is good in sports. How is today's majority
the thing is, it's always...
The example you gave is a mischief example. I don't think that...
No. It is all the same. If you think about it, someone wants to do drawing, right? Someone wants to do drawing. And okay. And you as a parent think that, okay, this drawing is a very low return activity, right? Unless you are a Picasso, it's very difficult for you to even make a decent living out of it, right? That is the reality. That is the reality, because any art depends on other people for appreciation and even for mere survival, right? And And the more expensive the art is, for example, if some child wants to go into cinema, right, into movies, right, then the parents are apprehensive, and rightly so. It is not that, because for every million people who want to go in that field, only 1 or 2 will actually make it, right? It is not even possible for the bottom 95% will be in poverty. It is not even like a middle class life is ruled out for them. And traditionally, this has been the ratio throughout history, right? And it is also not true that all children are creative and they are all capable of becoming Picassos, right? What I am saying is this kind of opposition, right, where you are opposing, providing a counterweight to the child's desires, right? It may actually test how much passion the child has. It is like if it is a strong desire, then only they will pursue that. If you are saying that, okay, it's just a contrarian view, but just think about it. Like some child is like drawing, and it's told that it's not very useful, right? And it just gives it up. Maybe the child does not have such a strong passion in that, right?
But you are trying to nip it in the bud, right? It's not
nipping it in the bud. It is not like you are humiliating the child or anything, but you are just saying giving some feedback, right? There are other things like the things as you said, right? That is just a mischief that they are doing, right? You tell a child which likes to break things, just tell it. Try to nip that in the bud. See how difficult it is to nip that in the bud. You tell them, hey, don't do this, right? It's not very useful. It actually makes it more fun for them. And you know what? And this is a psychology you would have noticed. Like if you say, don't do something, right? That adds some it has more allure to the child, right? The child wants to do that. Just because you say, hey, don't do that, don't go there, the child wants to go there. So whereas with the creativity, somehow this seems to be like you are nipping it in the bud, you are pouring acid into the roots. No, it's not like that. I am not saying you should humiliate the child, but nothing wrong with
no, sir. But realistic. I remember you said I don't want to go into this relationship, but you said once that one of your in your family, extended family, one girl who didn't like maths, right? Her parents forced into it, and she really suffered because of that. Is that not so? So the reason I'm giving this example is
my point is
it can prove really bad for kids. Yeah.
The point is forcing means what? Like they think, okay, maths is important, right? And you ask the child, okay, what do you want to do? And if she says, I want to go into higher research, just like my dad, right? So the influence of the parent is very much there, right? The child wants to do, like, suppose I am doing some high-end research, right? I am a scientist, sort of, right? Now my son wants to be a scientist. But on the other hand, he says, oh, actually, I'm not interested in maths, right? These are two totally conflicting wants or wishes of the child, right? So how do you reconcile these? So the point is, one example I think I keep coming back to is, I read this autobiography of Andre Agassi, right? it's at, I think the book name is Open. Open is the book's name, right? And where he talks about how he was so miserable growing up and his father forced him into tennis, right? He forced him into tennis, right? Whereas he wanted to do something else.
Yeah.
The point is that after he took a while to come to terms with that. He had a lot of physical limitations due to which he hated the sport. And you know, right, he took I think 2 to 3 years, he was completely out of the game. He was a forgotten entity. But then he came back and, what was considered at that time to be a too late kind of age. Like he came back into tennis when he was around 29, 30. And then he won like 3-4 Grand Slams.
Okay.
So now that has changed. But at that time, if you are beyond 30, that means that it's retirement time for tennis players, right? So, but Andre Agassi came back at a fairly, a late age, and he won because he said, I rediscovered or I discovered a love for the game, right? At that time. But growing up, when he had to go through this practice and all, right? I was in pain. I was in physical pain. I did not like the sport, right? But he is known as one of the all-time greats. And if he was not pushed into tennis by his father, right? Who, if you look at somebody pushing their children right now, you may think that he is a monster, right?
So he did the not so bad thing you are saying, right?
I'm saying that if you take tennis away from Agassi, right?
He's nothing.
What is he? He's nothing. You may say that, oh, you would have been happier.
So there is no problem according to you guys. There is no problem and all is good.
No.
Or there is a scope for improvement. Scope for improvement.
I am saying, yeah, scope for improvement is always there. I see this as, you are saying that, okay, it is the same system. I am saying that it is an evolution.
Okay.
It has evolved. And if somebody comes to me today and says that there is an alternative educational system, right? I am willing to consider that, but I want some kind of empirical proof on how this is better and how this is empirically better than the existing system. Instead of falling for some kind of,
new fad,
beautiful story, right? Because the alternative educational systems, they don't take the realities into picture, I feel.
Okay.
For example, there is a strong correlation, if you would, right? Finland is known as the happiest country in the world, right? For the past several years, Finland has been number 1 in happiness index, right? There is something called happiness index, and Finland has been topping that for the past several years in a row, right?
Yeah.
And it is also known that the Finland educational system is known as the best educational system in the world, right? So maybe there is a strong correlation between these two. But having said that, can we do that here? Because their teacher-student ratio will be so ridiculous, and they are a developed country, they are a first world country, and their population is so low, right?
It makes sense, yeah.
That they are able to do that, right? But if we have to come up with something universal, right? Universally applicable, can we do the same thing in India, right? Right now, the ratio of teacher to student here is like 1:2. I don't know. If you take the overall India, it may run into some ridiculous number. It may be like 1:200, 300, like that, right? Because in rural areas, there are schools. The entire school has one teacher.
Yeah.
That kind of schools exist. So when you are talking about, okay, an ideal educational system, right? I feel that the reality, we are missing the reality. So we have to work with what we have. That is what I am saying. I'm not saying whatever is there cannot be improved or anything, but I am saying that, yeah, it is very difficult to make changes. And we have to work with, for the time being, whatever we have is good enough, and we have to work with that.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense actually. Yeah. Venkat, would you like to say something?
No, man, that's what, right? I feel that, for majority it works, and there are some alternate schools, right, which for exceptional for people exceptional in certain fields, there are alternate schools available.
Which
right?
parents should identify. Schools don't have an...
Yes, not every school. See, the fact is that every school cannot cater to all specialization of the kids, right? That is why the specialization happens later in people's career, right? So for instance, if a 5th standard kid is exceptional in coding, right? For instance, let's say, right? Now the computer teacher assigned for 5th standard might only be so good, right? Now, it's on parents on making that, on realizing that their child is exceptionally good in coding or something. They put him through something. They put him in maybe an extra class, right? Out of school class.
Whitehead Junior kind of class, no?
Anything else, right? So that's up to so the point here is, school's job might be to provide some strong foundation to majority of people, which I think they are
in their limited resource constraint, they're doing a okay job, good enough job.
They're doing a fine job.
Majority.
Yes, they are doing a fine job there. Yeah. It's on parents to identify the exceptional talents of the children and then put them there, right? For instance, let's say singing, right? A child is very good in singing, right? There aren't any singing classes in school. Or dancing, right? Let's say a person is very good in Kuchipudi, but that Kuchipudi dance is not part of curriculum, right? And it cannot be, because if you see, most of the children will be fine even without doing Kuchipudi, right? So I think it may not be possible for a school to identify all these exceptional talents, which has to be the parents' job. And on identifying such a thing, the parents should pursue it probably in a different manner. Right?
So what are the tips for the parent? So can we think of any practical ways in which parents can operate? Because the schools have resource constraint, etc. But so do parents, right? In with respect to, they are trying to meet their ends meet, right? They are with the life is stressful today, right? So what can they do? Like, are there any tips, etc.? Or there should be any services for this purpose? Maybe some solutions out there. Are there any solutions out there for helping parents with this thing? Actually, because you are saying schools are fine, parents need to be smarter, right? But
I'm not saying schools are fine. I'm saying schools are doing what they can. Right? And if we have to, we will always expect more out of schools. But right now, it may not be possible, right? So I saw during this pandemic, they worked very hard, right? My son's school, they worked very hard, and they produced a lot of really good videos and then they had follow-up classes, everything. I don't blame them for anything, right? They did not spare any effort. But having said that, I could see that my son was not paying attention, right, to all those videos. Whereas if he had gone to the class, we hardly ever come to know, even if there is an exam or anything, right? We don't even come to know. Their system is such that they have revisions, everything. It happens in an organic way, right? It used to happen in an organic way. Like this final exam also, we are totally chilled out. We don't care. And he doesn't care. And he will not study. He will just go there and he will get, 85 to 90%. He used to get easily, right? Now, because he is not paying attention, if we don't push him, right? If we don't push him to study and all, he is likely to score only 65 to 70%, right? So, schools are doing what they can. And the other aspect is that kids do as you do rather than as you say, right? They watch and learn. Even when they go to school, they watch their peers and learn. They watch their teachers and learn. And they watch their parents and learn. And I feel that especially parents, have the biggest role here because they learn most from their parents. They watch their parents and learn. If you are a person who is following his passion, right? And you are putting in whatever work, then they are likely to follow that, right? Of course, exceptions will always be there. You will keep hearing stories about that. But we are talking about in general. I am saying that you be passionate if you want your child to be passionate.
Lead by example,
right? Lead by example. There is no other way that I see, right? You can tell them, but it has more often than not, it might even have an opposite effect, right? Because they see you telling something, doing something else. It's not going to work. They are going to do what you do, right?
Yeah.
So that is my thing. Like you, and the other thing is, if you are a guy who thinks that your child is creative, I feel that the most important thing to, foster that creativity and develop that further is free time. Instead of thinking of ways to improve your child's creativity, the first requirement is that you should give them that kind of, total free time. There is nothing that is there for you to do. You are just free. And then play, do whatever you want. Because the most creativity inducing activity that a child can do is free play, right? Where it is not a game. You are not putting your child in a coaching for a drawing or anything. Like you just say that this block of time is totally free. And you have, then they start looking around. What are the things I have? Okay. And so they might start building something. They might, some child might start drawing something, right? You make sure that those tools are available, right? And if you see like, okay, if you say that right now the time is entirely free, right? From afternoon 2 to evening 6, you don't have any scheduled activity, right? Even the fun activity, right? So-called fun activities, there is nothing scheduled for your child. Then just observe what they do, naturally gravitate towards. What do they do, right? Maybe they will gravitate towards watching TV or something, which obviously you can't allow. You are saying that, okay, entertainment, everything is taken out and this time is totally free for you. Some child will gravitate towards reading some book. Some child will start drawing something. Some other child will start, making something, start constructing something they will do. That will tell you what they are really interested in. And you make sure that there is an environment where they get that free time and they keep getting those tools periodically, right? If some child is exceptionally interested in drawing, make sure that, okay, progressively they keep getting those tools. And only when they get to certain stage where you feel that, okay, they are drawing all the time, but they can do with a certain professional guidance, then you consider putting them in a class or something. I feel that one mistake we do is that the moment you see your child drawing 1 or 2 days, it starts scribbling, you immediately want to hone it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you will put it in class, in a drawing class, right? And when you engage a professional, they will bring some structure into it. They will say, okay, yeah, this is how you go about it. First, you go and draw all these, circles, draw these triangles or whatever it is, right? They will have a curriculum, right? They feel that this is the way to progress. It is all about honing your skills. But that honing should not come too early in the process. Yeah. First, you have to develop your interest. First, you develop your interest and passion, and then you introduce opportunities for honing that. If you introduce the professional too early, the honing will start. The enjoyment will go out of the window, right? Yeah. Once you are interested in something, really interested, the child is interested, then they are willing to take some pain because they want to excel in that. Because they already know that, hey, I'm pretty good at it and I really like it. But now, if I want to go to the next level, I need to take some pain. It is never going to be like, it's never going to be like a joyous journey, right? Even for somebody like a Sachin Tendulkar, it was never about entirely about being joyous, right? You would have felt pain. You would have gone through days upon days of just mindlessly practicing the same shot over and over again. But he is able to take that kind of pain because he already has that love of the game, right? I feel that it is, that early interest should come from the parents and just let them explore few things. Give them a lot of free time as much as possible, right?
Makes sense.
And let them find themselves is what I feel.
True. The first thing is don't outsource whole parenting to your spouse, right? Just you have to be involved.
Both parents should be involved because each of us bring different things to the table. Yeah. And the thing is, they are watching and learning. If you are a standoffish, right? If let's say I don't get involved, I don't get involved in anything in my kids' lives, right? That is something my son is learning, right? Whereas in future, it will hurt him because the girls nowadays, they are coming with different expectations.
Yeah.
Right? They will have a feeling that, okay, I am not the one to take all the burden. Right?
Yeah.
Now, our wives may be okay with that because they grew up with the expectation that, the fathers will not be so involved. They may have that expectation. But now, because more and more parents are involved, the girls growing up now will have different expectations, right? So your son is learning that from you. And same way, if you have a daughter also, she may be learning that from you that I cannot expect any support from my spouse in future. And she may be settling for less from her spouse. You understand what I'm saying, right? Like if my daughter is watching me being all aloof and not really contributing to certain aspects of her life, right? She may grow up thinking that, yeah, this is what I can expect from a prospective future husband, right? And she may settle for less. I'm sure we don't want that. We may want that from our wives. But when it comes to our daughters, we want them to expect more and extract more from their spouses, for sure. We don't want them to ever be like doing all the household chores and giving their, spouses a free ride. And this guy will be sitting in a couch, being supplied and attended to. I don't want that for my daughter, right? So it is imperative that I should get involved so that she thinks that, oh, it's not acceptable. If my husband is just going to sit around and order me about, I'm not going to take it. I'm his equal, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like as a parent, you don't have an option than to lead by example. The worst thing you can do is preach, but not practice. Right? If you can't practice, it is better that you shut up, actually. Because the worst thing you can do is like say something, but not practice. Because then that is a very bad thing for the child. That, you just say some crap and you don't have to really follow through. Right?
True. That is well said by you, right? Yeah. I think we have had a good discussion, guys. I'm happy with the way the discussion and the points have come out. Anything else, Venkat, would you like to add, or you're good?
No, I'm good, Aman.
Cool, guys, then. Thanks a lot. I hope our viewers like today's podcast. Thank you. Good day. Happy weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.